Well, hello and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining my session. My name is Bart van de Wiele. I'm a principal solution consultant for Adobe by day and LinkedIn Learning author by night. This is the Adobe InDesign deep dive session for Adobe Max. So in this session, it is my objective to show you some techniques, both old and new, that are going to help you along the way every single day when you're working on your InDesign documents. Now, just a couple of things here before we get started. Now, first of all, this is an intermediate to advanced session. So this means that I do require you to have a little bit of InDesign experience before we start with this session. So this means that I expect you to know what a paragraph style is, what a master page is, how to apply certain effects. So you should already know these things before you get started with this specific course. Secondly, if you missed a step, there is a handout. I put a lot of work in the handout, so please follow along if you can, step by step, just on your own pace if you did miss a step. Now, those who've attended my session before, they will know that I'd like to pick up the pace a little bit, but this is absolutely fine because this is a recording. So this means that you can always pause and go back and see what step you missed. Third, if you want to know a lot more about Adobe InDesign, I do have some extra courses on LinkedIn Learning as well. So if you are a subscriber, I would say go nuts and try and find those sessions. And to finish off, try and have fun. I always have fun doing these sessions, and I hope that you're going to enjoy these just as much as I do. Now, let's get started with the very first exercise. This exercise is about working with Microsoft Word documents, and it is about using GREP inside of Adobe InDesign. So what we have to get started with here is just a regular two-page document where we already set up the logo and a graphic element, and we need to put in some text. And that text is going to come from Microsoft Word. So what we do is we're going to take a look at Microsoft Word first, and this is the original document. So this is the text that we have to pour into our InDesign file. Now, as you can see, I clearly have some body text. I've got a couple of subheaders and other types of headers here. And there's a lot of local formatting applied as well because there is a bit of bold. I've got some underline. I'm sure there's some italic there in somewhere. And what is really important is that we just quickly try and see what it is that we have to work with. So from the top of the screen, I'm going to click the Styles pane, which will show me the exact styles that are currently being applied within this document. And I can know this because at the bottom of the screen, it says list in current documents. So these are the ones that I currently have within this document. And I can clearly see that there is a normal style, there is a chapter style, there is a subtitle style. So this is actually a pretty easy document. But I still notice that a lot of people in InDesign, when they place content, they will actually lose all of the bolds and the italics, and they would just have to manually reapply all of those. So that's a problem that we need to overcome. Secondly, others would just import everything there is with the formatting from Word, but this is going to bring in RGB colors and a lot of different styles that you simply do not want to keep using. And in the end, you're going to end up with a big mess of styles. Now, I also have some graphical elements here. So I have a logo, I have a graphic element here in the corner, and I also have a picture. The problem is getting this out of the Word document. Now, I could potentially just select this image, copy it, and then paste it in Photoshop. But the problem is this image has probably been scaled down a little bit, or maybe it's been scaled up in Word. I'm not really sure. So when I copy and paste something back to Photoshop, I am copying and pasting exactly the version of that image that I see here within Word. If I change the contrast, if I convert this image into black and white using the Word filters, then I would copy and paste that into Photoshop. I need the original. So what do you do? Well, first of all, if you have graphical elements like this here, what you do is you take a look at the file itself. This is my first tip here. So this is something you can do with Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, any Office document. This is actually an archive. Now, bear with me here. I'm going to copy and paste this file, and I'm going to rename this document, and I'm going to name this zip. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to use the zip extension. Now, obviously, you can unzip a zip file. You can unarchive it. But when I double click this, I just get an error message. It's not a supported zip file. But what I did was I actually used a different app here. I'm using an app called the Unarchiver. If you click that, it will actually unzip that file. And here, I can actually twirl this open now and take a look at the content here within Word. Now, I'm sure there's a Windows equivalent of just unzipping something. I'm sure you can just use WinZip or something like that. But the point is, you can unzip an Office document. And here you basically try and find a media folder, and look at this here. This is all of the original content in its original resolution that was placed here within Word, PowerPoint, Excel, you name it. So I've got this one as a JPEG, I have a transparent PNG file, and I have an EMF file. Illustrator can open up EMF documents. These are vector files. So as I see the logo here, just as a very simple logo, this is actually a vector file that I was able to extract from Microsoft Word. Now, how do you place all of this content into InDesign? It's actually very simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and select the InDesign body style just to get started here, because I want everything that I'm going to place into InDesign to automatically come in using that body style. It's going to apply that body style automatically. So I'm going to go up to the File menu, and I'm going to choose Place to place that document. I'm going to go and navigate to that specific file here, and I'm going to show the import options as well. I'll choose Open, and from these options, I am going to make sure that I remove all the styles and formatting, but I want to preserve the local overrides. A local override is any extra formatting that was added to an existing style. So, for example, if I'm using a body or normal style in Word that says, for example, times 12 normal, and if I add bold, then that is the override. If I change the color to blue, that is the override. Same thing for underline, strike through, superscript, anything else. So by checking this box, I'm going to bring in everything, but I'm going to keep those local overrides. And that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and choose OK. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to click in here to automatically place all of the text until the second page here. As you can clearly see, everything has been retained. I still have my bolds, I have my italics, I have my underlines. Everything is perfectly intact, exactly what I wanted. Now it's time to clean up the text a little bit and start to apply different styles. Now, to apply these styles and clean up the text, I could do everything manually, which is fine. But I'm going to talk about GREP. I'm going to talk about regular expressions in Adobe InDesign, because this is really like the next step if you want to be more advanced, a more advanced user with Adobe InDesign. Now, the only thing I'm going to manually clean up here is just like these enters, because this is something that came in with the header. Now, I'm going to apply some of my styles here by using the Find and Change window instead of doing everything manually. Now, what I need to do is I need to find a way to automatically apply this subtitle style to every single subtitle I can find in the document. Now, I'm quickly just undo this here because I want to automate this. And I'm going to press Command F on the keyboard or Control F on Windows to open up the Find and Change window. And from here, I'm going to click the GREP category. And now I can start using GREP expressions to find exactly what I'm looking for. Now, the thing is, what makes a subtitle here unique in the text? That is the unique differentiator that I'm looking for. So I know for a fact that every single subtitle starts with a number, a period, and a space. But the problem is I have other numbered lists in the text as well, so this is not really going to help me. But what I also notice here is that every single number, period, and space is preceded with two hard returns, and that is very unique because we always have a double return before we start a subtitle, and I can use that. So let's take a look at the grep screen. So I need to find a number. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to try and find that grep code here. So I'm looking at a wildcard. I'm going to choose any digit. And now I'm also looking for a period. Now the code for a period is \period. Okay. So now I'm looking for any number followed by a period, and I'm going to type in a space as well. And now if I choose find, it's actually going to find every single instance of that expression. Now, of course, I want to make sure that I only find the ones preceded with a double return, but I don't want to find the double return itself. This is just the circumstance in which I would like to find the number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor just in front of this expression because the circumstance happens before the actual number. So I'm going to mimic that behavior by putting my cursor before the expression as well. So I'm basically saying, find me any number followed by a period, followed by a space, as long as before that expression, open up the menu. Let's use a match option and say positive look behind, which means I'm going to look behind, so see what comes before that text. And that equals, put your cursor next to the equal sign, one end of paragraph, two end of paragraphs. So this means find a number and a period and a space, but only if it occurs after a double return. I'm going to choose find, and there we go. This is the first one. Find next, found another one. So I'm going to find all of these here. Now, what would I like to change? I'm going to change the formatting. I'm going to click in the change format box. I'm going to choose a different paragraph style. I'm going to choose my subtitle style. I'll choose change all, and boom, I've got 6 replacements. I have now just applied that style to every single title. Now I'm going to replace the current numbering system with an actual numbered list. It's great that this was typed manually, but I do want to automate this just a little bit here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and try and automate as much as I can. So I'm going to right click the subtitle style. I'm going to choose edit. From here, I'm going to go down and choose the bullets and numbering option. And I'm going to choose numbers because I want to have a numbered list. Now, notice that here there's a major gap between the actual number and the text. So I'm going to change that by changing the alignment options here at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to put my cursor in here. I'm going to press the up arrow. Let's say up until 1.5. Now I'm going to go down and say -1.5. That's going to give me a pretty good alignment. Now, what is important here is that we do add a list type to this. So list basically means that if I create a new list, then every single number in the subtitle style is only going to follow the previous number in that same style. So for example, imagine that as you can see here, I have an existing numbered list. Then that means that this would become a 4 because 4 comes after 3, right? I wanted to ignore any other number and only take a look at the same numbers within the same style. So because of that, I just need to add a list option here. I'll call it subtitle, which means only follow along with this numbered list as long as you're part of the subtitle style. That's the only thing you have to do. I'll choose OK, and now we have applied that style. Now I have to get rid of the original numbers, right? Because I want to replace those. So how do you delete those? Let's go back to the Find Change window. I'm going to get rid of my change format, and I am just going to get rid of this here as well. And I'm going to say that it should now find a number followed by a period followed by a space, but only within the subtitle style. So it's going to limit its search scope with just this here. I'm going to choose find. It is going to find those numbers. I do not want to replace this with anything else. So I'm going to leave the change options blank, which means delete it. I'll choose change all. And now I have gotten rid of all of this here. Now I can do the exact same thing here for these titles. It's actually a chapter title with Roman numerals. And I know there's a 1, there's a 2, and there's a 3. Now this is basically a capital I. It's just a letter I. And so what I can do is I can try and find those I's as well by first of all clearing everything I have on the grep screen and trying this again. So I'm going to say, you know what? I want to find a capital I, but only locations at the beginning of the paragraph. Okay, so it should only happen here. There should be a capital I, but sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3. So I'm going to add a plus because it's 1 or more followed backslash period by an actual period and a space. So this is going to find the 1, the 2, the 3. It's going to find everything. And now I can change this by adding the chapter style. I'll choose click to change all, and now I've applied that style as well. Now I can do the exact same thing by adding a numbered list here. So same thing, let's add the style, bullets and numbering, add a numbered list, the Roman numerals, and again, I'm going to change the indent a little bit. Let's say 1.7, and then you should go down the same number as well to keep the spacing consistent. And I'm also going to create a list for this. This is a chapter list. So again, now the numbers are only going to look at the other numbers within the same style. And now I've done the exact same thing. This is basically just a repetition of what we've just done. But now I need to get rid of the original numbers. So again, let's find and change. Let's get rid of the change options. Let's find this. I'm going to find 1, 2, 3. Do not enter anything for change. Change all means delete. And now, again, this is gone. And the cool thing is that we now have applied all of this automatically. The last thing I need to do is clean up all of the returns I have everywhere. Like it does double return here, double return there. I want to clean everything. Let's go back to the find change window. But there's actually a query that you can use because it comes with InDesign. It ships with InDesign. So from the query options at the top of the screen, just choose one from the list here. I'm going to choose multiple returns, a single return, which is this code. And now I'm going to choose change all. And this is also going to clean up all of these double returns. And I'm going to choose done. And this is now cleaned up and I've applied my styles. The cool thing is, if you even want to change things like convert this into, let's say, a double column, everything will align beautifully. I mean, look at the spacing here. This is all perfectly aligned because we were using a numbered list with these alignment options and indents and stuff. And this is now perfect. There you have it, the very first exercise. Quite a bit of GREP already, but it's just a matter of practicing. Let's take a look at the second exercise in this series. So I'm going to start out with the exact same insurance document that we built in the first exercise. The only exception here is that I also added a body list style just to kind of clean up those numbered lists here. Now, this is a scenario that I actually came across a couple of times in my design career where the customer is basically asking me for a system where they can just choose which paragraphs are included within like the special conditions of a contract. So basically, I'm looking for a very flexible way of hiding portions of the text. Now, of course, a lot of people will basically just kind of duplicate this text shape, put this on a different layer, have like version 1 and version 2, where version 1, certain parts are hidden or just basically delete it. Version 2 has the full text, but then there will be change, and you have to make the change to version 1, and then you forget about version 2, which is a hidden layer. Anyway, it's a mess. So what we need to do is we need a way to flexibly hide text in the story while having only one version of that text. Okay, so I want to make this like a very variable thing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose window. I'm going to choose type in tables and I'm going to choose conditional text because we can add a condition to the text in this document. Now imagine just for now that, for example, the third paragraph is something that we do not always want to include in this contract. So this means that I do not want to see the third paragraph being included every single time. So it's called death benefit. And what I can do is I can add a very specific condition to that. So first of all, I'm going to click this button here to create a brand new condition, which is now called death benefit. And I'll just choose OK. Now notice it says light blue wavy underline. I'll choose OK. And now I'm going to select all of the text within that paragraph. So everything that makes up the death benefit, basically anything that I would like to hide, including that final return, which is very important. And now I'm going to click this checkbox next to the death benefit condition. And now it does really give me a blue wavy underline. Now, this is how we apply a condition. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing here at the bottom. So for example, here I've got some supplemental pricing. I do not always want to include that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select everything, including that table. I'm going to go ahead and create a new condition. I'm going to call this pricing guide, which is a red wavy underline. I'll choose OK, and I'm going to click to apply that pricing guide as well. Now look what happens if I now take a look at the death benefit. If I click this eye icon to hide this particular condition, it will take along everything that has the condition applied. Now look, if I click the eye icon, it removes that specific part of the contract. And because I'm using a numbered list, it's also updating the numbering system across the entire document because, as you know, if I would just delete that manually, then it would go from number 2 to number 4 and it would just fall apart. So now it is actually dynamically even updating the numbering system. It can do the exact same thing here with the supplemental plan. I can just get rid of that extra pricing. And this is actually a very cool way of managing your data inside of one InDesign document. Maybe you have a long contract like this. Maybe you have a personalized letter, dear sir, dear madam, certain pricing configurations. Let's deselect the dollars. Let's activate the euros. Anything you want. Conditional text is actually very much an underestimated feature within Adobe InDesign. Now let's take a look at a very cool way to add some extra formatting to your paragraphs. And we're going to talk about paragraph shading and paragraph borders, something that was added to Adobe InDesign a couple of years ago, but I don't see a lot of people actually using. Now, I am using the exact same insurance document here. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we take every single subtitle and its body text and put that in a separate frame, or at least something that looks like a separate frame. Now, this means that I need to add some shading in the back. So again, a lot of people will probably go ahead and do something like this. So they're going to go ahead and draw a frame and maybe lower the tints and then put this here in the background, send to back. It looks like this. And then maybe something similar like so with a different tint. So basically, it's something like this, okay? But then for every single paragraph. But of course, obviously, this will not travel with the paragraph. If there's ever a text modification, things will just fall apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the styles instead. So I'm going to right click the body style. I'm going to choose edit. And we're going to head down to something called paragraph shading. And I'm going to click the shading option, and this is what it looks like. So it's going to shade every single individual paragraph. Now, clearly, there are some gaps in between these shadings. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put my cursor here inside of the offset value. I'm going to press the up arrow key on my keyboard, and this is going to expand this so it kind of touches one another. And this is what's going to act as that frame, basically. Now, the only thing I need to do is just go ahead and change this color to green, and I already have what I was looking for. This is super fast. Now, I can even go ahead and change these corners to round corners if I want to actually make it look like a frame. But again, that's completely up to you. So for example, I could still go ahead and let's say maybe add like a round corner here at the bottom right and here at the bottom left. You can actually see that happening here. And then maybe change the top value a bit like this. You can kind of go ahead and play with this as much as you want. I'm going to go ahead and just reset this now to what it was before. Now you can also click the paragraph border option, which is going to add a border around the paragraph, which looks like this. And I'm going to add just 1 point here. As you can see, this is not really aligned with the shading. It does ignore the shading, but it does come on top of the shading. And now it's just a matter of basically choosing a different color, and let's say green. And maybe I might want to have half a point, and I'm going to add the exact same zero point 0.3 offset. And now with these values, as you can see, it's like I have a perfect frame around my text. And this is really, really cool because if you ever have other text, I'm going to just go ahead and take some placeholder text here. If you have some example text, you can always say, you know what, I want this to be in a frame. You could go ahead and just apply that style body, and boom, it has now put that into a frame. And of course, if you use the eyedropper tool, click to take up the actual style, you can go ahead and go and apply those frames everywhere. And if you click in between, it's going to connect everything into one single frame. It is pretty darn cool. Now I can actually go ahead and do the exact same thing for example, these subtitle heads as well. And you're going to see it's going to look really, really nice just by adding some simple formatting here. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and add some shading. The shading looks like this. I am going to go ahead and just expand that to 0.3 as well, something like that. I might change this to green, and I'm going to go ahead and change the color of my text to white. And there we have it. We have a title that we have perfectly shaded here. If you want, you can even go ahead and add that exact same border of half a point to really make it align around this frame as well. Maybe I'm going to add some green, and now I don't have that little step here going from the actual subtitle to the body. And this is basically it. This is how easy it is to apply these things. And again, you can be very creative with this because nothing is stopping me from, for example, looking at that border and then choosing to use dots, for example, and then increasing the size of the dots. Again, I can actually be quite creative applying all of this here. And again, everything I do, if I go ahead and now just hit enter and add some text, everything will just grow and shrink with those paragraphs. And because it's in a style, nothing is stopping me from just editing the style and then having like a global update across the entire document. So paragraph shading, paragraph borders, give them a chance. I think you'll notice that they're really going to save the day when you're dealing with these types of documents. Now, let's take a look at how we can track the changes within an Adobe InDesign document. So I currently have this file open here, which is sitting inside of this folder here, number 4. And so this is just a very simple example of a food magazine. So we've got some recipes here, we have an article, and of course, people work on this document all the time. And so our customer might come in and might change certain things. They might change some of the ingredients or some of the instructions on how to cook this particular dish. And all of a sudden, we notice that the customer wants to go back to a previous version, but we don't have a backup of every single version. So tracking the changes in a document can be very important. And then in other occasions, someone else in my team, my company, might be working on the same document because it's hosted on a server. And then they change certain things without me knowing it. And then I don't have any way of actually verifying who made the change in the document and when. So there's also an accountability piece here. So what you can do is you can use something called track changes. Now, how does it work? Well, first of all, you go up to the window menu, you choose editorial, and then you choose track changes. And as you can see here, this is what it looks like. Now, before you can properly use it, you have to configure yourself as a user. So what you do is you go up to the file menu and you choose user. And here you basically type in your own name and you choose a color. Now, this means that every single thing you do within this file that is tracked will have this username tied to those changes. So in this case, everything that is under my name and everything that is gold will be represented, by myself. I'll just quickly go ahead and let's choose OK. Now, what you do is you have to activate the track changes option because InDesign does not do this by default. So what happens is you have to put your cursor in a text story. You don't have to make a selection. It's just put the cursor in the text story. And then you have to click this little power option here, which says enable track changes in current story. And then it will start to record anything you do within this story. Now, of course, if you have a lot of different stories and a lot of different frames here, what you can always do is click here and then click the enable tracking in all stories option, which will basically flick that switch for you in every single flow within that same document. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the end version of this document because I think it looks the same, but I'm not really sure. The thing is, this document has been changed quite a bit, and it's now to me to review some of the changes that have happened here inside of this document. Now, I don't really see anything, and the track changes window is still empty, so what gives? What you need to do is you need to put your cursor in the story of which you would like to see the changes, and then you go up to the edit menu, and then you choose edit in story editor. And so the story editor is going to show you just the copy that is inside of that text frame or that text story. As you can see here, there is a change that was made. So apparently it says with when the pasta is cooked, set aside for 10 minutes. Okay. So apparently the original text said set aside, and someone added the text for 10 minutes. And look, it was me. And I did this at this date and that time. And so basically, if you click anywhere inside of a text frame or a text story, if you use the story editor, shortcut Command Y or Control Y on Windows, you can actually see what that change was. Now, the thing is right now, as you can clearly see, again, this is all my doing. I deleted text, I added text. But if this does not really make any sense, what you can do is you can go up to the InDesign menu, choose Preferences, and then choose Track Changes. On Windows, this is Edit Preferences, Track Changes. And from here, you can actually decide what these colors represent. So I'm going to say that when I see added text, that should be forest green. Deleted text should, for example, be represented in red, and moved text should, for example, be represented in lavender. I'll choose OK, and now we can see that, okay, apparently this was not 1/4, but it was half of an ounce, for example. Same thing here, 5 and 4. I can actually see what this was originally. And so the cool thing about these things here is that when you're working with the story editor, when you're working through these things here, you can go ahead and you can choose to accept or reject those changes. For example, here we deleted some text. I don't think this was necessary. So what we can do is go ahead and then choose this reject change option and reject this change. And now it will go back to the previous version of what that was before. So this means that you can basically go ahead and then select a text story, look at the story editor. Let's say I'm going to take a look at this one here because I have more changes. And what you can do is now just choose this arrow that brings me to the first change, the next change, the next change. I can basically review and then accept or reject those changes with every single change there is in this story. So if I'm kind of not happy with all of this, I can just select everything and just say no, go back to the original, and then it will just update and then actually go back to the original. We're going to go ahead and undo that change here. Now, if you click the panel menu, you can actually choose to accept or reject changes by specific user as well. Because I could, for example, see not just my name, but say one of my coworkers' name in the same document and see that this person has changed the document, and it will track the time, the activity, and the name of that person as well. So there you have it. This is just a quick way for you to track changes in a document and then revert to those changes if that would ever be necessary. Let's move on to the very next exercise. This is the fifth exercise. It's called Table Champion. And this is because I think all of you should become an InDesign table champion. Why? Well, in my experience, whenever I see someone working with Adobe InDesign, even when they're very experienced, the moment tables come into play, their work pace just slows down. Everything just slows down. They start working more slowly. It's difficult to manipulate the table. It just takes a long time to manipulate and update the data inside of a table. So I have a couple of quick tips for you guys so you can work a lot faster when placing content as a table, when formatting a table, and when manipulating the table itself as well. So if we take a look at this folder here, number 5, we have an Excel document, which is an XLSX file, which looks like this here, as you can see in the background. And the first tip is about importing data into Adobe InDesign. Now, normally, if you choose File and then Place into InDesign, it's going to place the entire table, okay, unless you kind of know which cell till which cell, like which range you would like to place. But let's be honest, we don't really know this from the top of our heads. Now, the alternative would be to select the stuff that you need and then copy that and then go into InDesign and then paste that, but then it comes in as tabs and you have to convert it into a table. And anyway, again, it's not really what you're looking for. Now, here comes the first tip. The tip is you can make a selection of a part of a table, as in the part that you would like to place into InDesign, and you can right click and then choose Define Name. When you give that a name, my underscore name, and you choose OK, it's going to save that within the Excel file as like a saved selection. Now, if you then save the file as a legacy XLS, it doesn't work with the most recent file format. You have to choose XLS. When you save it as that file format, InDesign can pick that up for you. So if you have a very long table, like a very big table, if you want to avoid basically pulling in everything in that entire file, what you do is you go ahead and you make a couple of selections of what is exactly that you're looking for. And then in InDesign, when you open up that file, I currently have this one open, Beehive Report Start, you can choose File, Place, and then when you select that specific file, which is in the Start folder, sorted data.xls, choose Import Options. I'll choose Open. Then you can change the cell range to the selections that you have saved beforehand. So for example, I'm going to choose inventory costing. I'll choose OK. I'm going to click, and now I've only imported that section of that Excel document. So again, something that you can use if you have a very long document. That's the first tip. Now, the second one is about formatting. Now, as you know, we need to format this table, not just the text in the table, but also the table itself. And so the thing is, you can use a variety of paragraph styles and cell styles to make that happen, but not everyone is already using table styles. Now, if I take a look at this text here, so if I select the entire table by hovering my mouse cursor at the top left, so you can have that big black arrow, you click once. As you can see from a paragraph style point of view, I have selected the basic paragraph style. Now, if you take a look at the table and cell styles, which you can activate, by the way, by going up to Window, choosing Styles, and then choosing either cell and or table styles, you will have these styles listed here as well. Now, I always use a style called Clean Cells, which looks like this, which basically cleans out every single type of formatting from the table formatting. Now, how do you build something like this? Very easy. You just create a new cell style, and then you just have to make sure that here in the strokes and fills section, that you select 0 points for weight and none for a color for every single type of stroke within your selection. And that's what you save. And this means that every single table that comes in is completely clean, and it's a lot easier to add formatting than it is to replace formatting. So this is the first step, what you do when you import your data. Now, I have individual styles, individual paragraph styles that I would like to apply into this table. I also have individual cell styles that I would like to apply to the same table, and I actually named them the same way just to make things easy. Now, the tip here is that what you can do is you can basically edit your cell styles, and you can ask InDesign to not just apply the formatting of that style, but also in the same time, at the same time, apply a paragraph style as well. So you're basically formatting not just a table, but also the contents of the table at the same time. So now basically I am nesting my paragraph styles into the cell styles. And I've done this 4 times here. So this means that in theory, I could say everything should be body. This should be the header. This should be the far left column. And this should be the footer. And now I have my formatted table. It's a bit too big, but we'll fix that. But now I have my formatted table. Now, if you want to do this in one go, I'm going to choose none for the cell styles for now. You can combine these 4 styles, these 4 cell styles, into a table style. So what you do is you create a new table style, and you would say when you apply the table style for, let's say, the black table, that you're going to apply the header cell style for the headers. You're going to apply the footer style to the footer, the body style to the body rows, and the far left column is going to have the left column style. I don't have a right column style in this exercise here. It's going to apply all these cell styles, and of course, these cell styles have paragraph styles. So you're applying everything in one go. So I'm going to go ahead and choose OK. And now I just need to select everything, and I am going to click that table style. Now notice it is not applying my cell styles here for the header and the footer. And that is because I have not assigned a header or a footer. So when you select that, you right click, you choose convert to header rows. And this one you have to convert here to body rows here, which is this selection here. You can say convert to footer rows. And now we have the table that we want. So now every single time when you place in a table, for example, I'm going to pick a different one here. I'm going to place sold analysis. If I click here, it's going to be very easy. The only thing you have to do is, of course, make sure that we have a header and that we have a footer. And then you just have to click and apply one style, and it just brings in everything, which is pretty darn cool. Now, how can you manipulate the table? It's actually very, very easy. When you make a selection, let's say you take a big selection of a column here, column there, or maybe a row, you can actually move the information. So if, for example, if I take this column and the column needs to go here, click and drag the column and then put it there. Again, you can drag and drop columns. You can drag and drop rows as well. Just select it and then drag and drop it. Very easy. Secondly, what you can do is it's very easy to reallocate the spacing in between columns and rows. For example, here, what I can do is I can go ahead and I am going to make this table a bit larger. So I can put my cursor here at the very bottom row, click and hold down, and then add the shift key. So click and hold down the mouse first, don't let go, then add the shift key. And look, if I drag, it's going to drag everything out. It's like a like an accordion, basically. Same thing here. Click and hold down the mouse, then add the shift key afterwards. Again, the same accordion, which is pretty cool. You can also go ahead and use that same shift key within a table. So let's just say that I'm going to select this column, right click, I'm going to choose split the cells vertically, which is going to give me an extra column. Now, if I were to make this column a bit more narrow by, for example, dragging this edge inwards, look what happens. It is going to move the entire table outside of the frame, which is not what I want. Instead, I want to redistribute the space in between without moving the actual table outside of my frame here. So look what happens here. I'm going to zoom in. You click and hold down the mouse, you add the shift key, it's going to redistribute the space within these two columns instead. This is a lot more flexible to work with. And of course, we can always go ahead and select other columns, right click them and choose distribute columns evenly. And now my table is perfectly formatted. Let's add some images here. So I'm going to select these three cells and I'm going to add some images because I know people struggle when adding images to tables and cells. I'm going to go up to the table menu and I'm going to choose convert cell to graphic cell, which is going to convert these to actual graphic frames within a table. Keep them selected by using the type tool, not by using the selection tool. It is still a table, so we use a type tool. Select them, go up to object, then choose fitting, frame fitting options, and then set your settings. For example, I want auto fit and I want to fit the content proportionally from the center. And I'll choose OK. Now look what happens here. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to choose File Place. And now I'm going to go and get a couple of images. And you can actually find images in the end folder of this chapter. And there's a links folder there. I'm going to select all three PDFs. And I'm not going to choose the input options. I don't need them for now. I'm going to choose open and I'm just going to go ahead and click inside of these cells and it's going to place those icons beautifully inside the cells. And now if I select these cells, because as you can see, the artwork is touching a little bit on the edges here. If I select these three by using the type tool, you can actually go ahead and increase the inset spacing and look, because auto fit was on, it's actually going to shrink those individual icons as well. And now I have a beautiful system that I can use to just redistribute the space I have within that column. And this is the table that we have. So this is how you manipulate images inside a table, how to manipulate the table itself by using like an accordion or redistributing the space in between, formatting using table styles, and selectively bringing in content from Microsoft Excel. Let's take a look at the next exercise, which is exercise number 6. It's called Australia. Now, this is going to be about GREP. So again, it's about those regular expressions that you can use to automatically apply formatting or to find and change very complex patterns of text. So here in this exercise, we're currently working on this contact page here for Australian National Parks. And so as you can clearly see, there's just some basic text in here where we have the phone numbers, we have the email addresses. So we have some recurring categories of information here for this very specific project. And all of this is using a style called body text. Now, in the first exercise in this session, we've used the find and change window to find formatting and then apply a style to that. Now, we're going to use a different way to apply GREP from within a style now called a GREP style. Now, a GREP style is basically a dynamic reference to a character style. So the thing is, we're going to use GREP to identify phone, email, location, phone, fax, ABN, everything here at the left-hand side. And we're going to automatically apply a character style to that text. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to go into the paragraph styles panel. I'm going to right click body text and I'm going to choose edit body text. From here, I'm going to choose GREP style and I'm going to choose new GREP style. Now, I need to decide which character style from the document that I currently have open I would like to apply to that text. Now, I only have one called hyperlink. I don't really have the one I'm looking for, so I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to choose new character style. I'm going to call this one information or maybe contact. Maybe that's better. Contact. And what is it I would like to change? Well, I would like to make sure this is a bold version of the text, and I also want to change the color. Now, I'm looking for something that's a bit green, but I don't have green. So a lot of people stop at this point, and they would basically cancel out of every single window just to add a green color using the swatches panel, and then go back here and redo everything, and then pick that green color from the list. You do not have to do this. Let me show you a quick tip here. If you don't have the color you're looking for, then you can see this icon. Just double click on top of this icon here, and it will trigger the new color swatch options. It's hidden. It's just a shortcut to there. It's like Super Mario Brothers. Welcome to Warp Zone. That's kind of what this is like. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just choose a greenish color, maybe a little bit of black here, something like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is a GREP exercise and nothing more to it. I'll choose OK. I'm going to select that green color. I'm going to choose OK. So now I'm going to apply that green style to, and by default, it gives you this expression, which basically means find any digit, no matter how long the digit is. So that's why it's automatically applying and finding that style here in that text, which is great, but it's not really what I'm looking for right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just remove that GREP expression, and I'm going to click here inside this area just to refresh this here. And I'm going to go ahead and start clean. Now, I know for a fact that I'm looking for phone with a capital P, colon, email, colon, and this, and et cetera, et cetera. So basically, it's a word and then followed by a colon here. So if I just type in that symbol, if I just type in an actual colon here, it is going to find that and it's going to apply that style to that exact character. But it's also applying that here to the actual URL, which is not what I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type phone with a capital P. I'm going to click inside this area again to refresh, and now it's going to find exactly that. Now, in theory, I could go ahead and create a new GREP style and do this again. And now, for example, type email colon, and then do this like 5-6 times, which is fine, which is absolutely perfect. But let's make this a little bit more complicated here because this is an advanced session, right? So I'm going to delete this here. So I'm going to say that I am going to put phone in parentheses, but I'm not going to put the colon in parentheses here because I'm going to basically sum up every single word that I am looking for. And I need to have parentheses to basically say that this is a set of words. And in order to make a distinction between the different words here, I am going to click here. I am going to choose match, and I'm going to choose or, which gives me the pipe symbol. If you can just type it using the keyboard, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to type in phone or email. I'm going to type another pipe symbol here, or phone, email, fax. I can't believe they're still using fax, or ABN, or location. And now I'm going to click away and it's going to find everything. Now, the reason I'm not including the colon here inside of this sum of words it's looking for is because by placing it outside of the parentheses, outside the set, basically means that I'm looking for a colon character preceded by either location, either ABN, either fax, email, or phone. So that's why this is everything that's variable and this is fixed. That's why it's not within that set of parentheses here. And that is basically it. This is how you can do this. And the cool thing is, if you ever add text, like I've got some extra text here on the left-hand side, if I, for example, just kind of copy and just kind of paste over that text, now it's just a matter of, for example, taking the eyedropper tool and saying, you know what, I'm going to take the body style, I'm going to apply that to everything. It will automatically also apply that formatting here. I'm going to click to empty it out, and now I'm going to take that style over the subhead, I'm going to click to apply the subhead style. And that is it. This is how quickly you can actually make this work. Now, if you also want to format the URLs and the email addresses, yes, you can use grep for that as well. The grep expression is a bit more technical, but know that you don't have to use grep for this. A lot of people, they basically go nuts trying to find a grep that will find all email addresses. There's actually a shortcut to get to that point as well. So, for example, if you want to format all email addresses and all URLs, everything that's basically interactive, then make sure you have a style. I have a hyperlink style, good to go. Then choose window, choose interactive, and then choose hyperlinks. And from the hyperlinks panel, there's actually a panel menu that says convert URLs to hyperlinks, which gives you this search box. And it allows you to not just find all hyperlinks and URLs, but also automatically apply a character style to them. I'm going to just choose convert all, and I just found 5. And not only are they now formatted, they're also listed in this document, which means if you export this file to an interactive PDF, everything will be clickable. It will be accessible from within that PDF, which is really, really cool. So there you have it, another exercise on grep, but this time by using grep styles. Let's take a look at the final exercise in this series here. It is the 7th exercise. It's called catalog. And we're going to do a couple of really, really cool things here. Now, first of all, we're going to automatically apply the same formatting to these categories of information on this shoe catalog page. And secondly, we're going to take a look at how we can change the formatting of the pricing based on the number of the actual price. And then we're going to create something we call a responsive header. So a header that will shrink and grow automatically as we add more text. And then I'm going to show you a whole range of tips and techniques on how to work with images in bulk in InDesign. So let's quickly get started here. So I have currently opened up this file here. It's called catalogstart.indd, and this is what the page looks like. So the first thing I'm going to be doing here is apply a character style called all caps to this text here, because of course it has sizes, materials, style, colors. It has these recurring categories of information here for these product records. So this is something that we can very easily fix using grep. It is very similar to what we've done with the Australia project just before. So if I do this very, very quickly, I am going to just apply that to my paragraph style. Now notice I have jazzed up my paragraph styles a little bit by adding all sorts of crazy emoji. I just sometimes do this. So what I do is I would basically take a look here at Emojipedia, just type in the word shoe, and you just go ahead and you copy the emoji and you paste that here into your paragraph styles, just to kind of make things a bit more fun, or just to kind of make certain styles be found a lot easier. You can even add emoji to your Photoshop layers, which is, again, it's a lot of fun to do. But anyway, so this is the product description. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click product description. I'll choose edit. And from here, I'm going to go down and choose grep style. Now, I'm going to be really quick with this just to kind of show you how fast these things can actually go. So I'm going to go, okay, I need these words to be formatted. That's fine. I'll choose new grep style. I'm going to go ahead and choose the all caps style. And I'm going to type in opening and closing parentheses for having a set. I'm just going to start typing sizes, pipe symbol, material, pipe symbol, style, pipe symbol, colors, click away to apply, and boom, we've just applied all of this in just a matter of seconds. Now, let's keep going here. Let's take a look at the prices. This is a bit more difficult. So I'm going to right click the price paragraph style in just a second here. And I'm going to show you that we can basically apply 2 different character styles. One character style is just called superscript, which just basically applies superscript. The second style is called invisible decimal. And what it does is it will change the color of the character to none, and it will change the size of the font to 1 point. So it's shrinking it to a very, very small number, and it's applying the none style, basically making it look invisible. It's very, very tiny, it's still there, but it looks invisible in the actual formatting. If I just apply that locally, you'll see that this is what it looks like. Pretty cool, right? Now I'm quickly going to go ahead and just undo this here. Make sure none is applied here from the character styles panel. Now let's go back to the paragraph styles, right click price, edit price, click on grep style, and let's get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to apply the invisible decimal style to the period that I have here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in a backslash period, which means an actual period. Click in here to apply, and look what happens. It has now made that period disappear. Now, of course, we have to be careful because now it seems like this shoe has become extremely expensive. So what we have to do now is we have to make sure that the last two numbers are superscript. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a grep style. I'm going to call this one superscript, and I need to apply this to the double digit that comes after a period. So the rule is find me double digits as long as it is preceded by a period. We've done this before in the very first exercise of this session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click here. I'll choose wildcards and I'll choose any digits. This is backslash D, but of course I need two, so I'm just going to type another backslash D. So this is find me a double digit. But now I'm going to put my cursor in front of it because I'm looking for something that precedes it. I'm going to click the Add menu again. I'm going to choose Match. I'm going to choose Positive Look Behind. It comes with this set of characters here, and I'm going to put my cursor here next to the equal symbol. So what should come before it? An actual period. What's the code again? Backslash period. If I click away, it's going to do exactly that. So now it's going to say it's going to apply a superscript to a double digit as long as it's preceded by a period. And that's exactly what this does. And this looks pretty good. I have to say 125.99, 189. But maybe we want to add another grep style and say that if the price ends with a double zero, maybe it's just not even worth having the double zero around anyway. If it ends with 99 or 50 or a different number that's not double zero, it does of course make sense to keep that number in here. So what we can do is add a third style. Again, this is just perfectly optional. And I'm going to say that this should be invisible again. And I am going to basically type in a double zero, put the cursor in front of the double zero, and now say that the circumstance is, again, match, positive look behind, and we're going to put in a backslash period. So this means apply an invisible style to every double zero you encounter as long as it's preceded by an actual period. And that's exactly what it does. So this is actually kind of cool. So this means that if you were to change this from 125.99 to 125.00, the double zero will disappear. See, it's all part of formatting. So this is pretty cool. Now let's take a look at a responsive header here. So I am looking at formatting this, but of course I don't feel like turning my head over all of the time. So I'm going to go into the Pages panel. I am going to right click this page. I'm going to choose Page Attributes. I'm going to choose Rotate Spread View. I'm going to choose 90 degrees clockwise, which is going to visually rotate my page so I have a way of working. Please do not select and then manually rotate the object just so you can see it, just to rotate it back. There's no guarantee you will ever put it back in the right position. Don't mess around with that stuff. Just rotate the camera instead, which is exactly what we're doing here. Now, this is my title because it says this is a title. If you go up to the window menu and then choose info, it will actually show you how many characters you currently have within this story. It's 15. Now, I know for a fact that if I add more text to this, that's going to keep growing up to the point where it's going to have overset text. I have the little plus symbol here. So this is a problem. Now it says 21 characters are visible, 3 are hidden. So that's 21 characters is more or less the like the threshold, like the tipping point when my text is going to become overset. So this means that if I want to add more than 20 characters, I should have a smaller type size. I should have a smaller font, basically. So this is something that I would like to automate. So what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and I've created several character styles. One is plus 22, one is called plus 26, and one is called plus 30. Now, what does it do? Well, nothing much. The only thing it does is this one will reduce the size to 35 points. So as you can see, the original text is about 38 points. It's a bit of an odd number, I gotta admit. It's about 38 points. It's gonna make that smaller and make that shrink to 35. This style is going to make the text even smaller to 30, and the other one's going to make it even smaller, going down to 25. So I've got basically smaller, even smaller, smallest. That's what my styles could be named as well. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell InDesign to automatically make the font size smaller as I add more text to my title, making it responsive. Now, let's take a look here. So I'm going to take a look at my paragraph style. My paragraph style is called variable header. I'm going to right click that and I'm going to choose edit. And here from the GREP category, I'm going to tell InDesign that it should automatically apply a style with a smaller font size, a smaller point size, whenever it exceeds X amount of characters. So I'm going to create a new GREP style. I'm going to say that I'm going to apply this one. And I actually named these very specifically 22, 26, 30 because I know that 22 is when I actually have overset text. And then same thing for 26 and 30 characters as the text grows smaller. So I'm going to say that it should apply this style whenever it comes across 22 characters. Now, how do you say a character in GREP? Well, what you do is you can go ahead here and you can choose a wildcard and you can choose any character, which is basically a period. Now I have to tell InDesign how many characters I'm looking for. Well, it's going to be at least 22. And how do you say that? What you do is you basically type curly brackets, and then you type in the number followed by a simple comma. So 22 comma basically means I'm looking for any character at least 22. So 22 or more. Let's do the exact same thing here. New GREP style, 26 characters, same thing. Type a period, which means any character. Remember, a real period is backslash period, right? Curly brackets, 26 comma. New GREP style. It is very repetitive. Same thing. Period, curly brackets, 30 comma, like this. That's it. Now I'll choose OK, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to start typing, okay? Now keep in mind that 15 characters are what I have now. Take a look at this here. Let's type a very long, I'm nearing the 22 character limit. Look at the type size. Long, it just shrink. It just is shrunk down. Very long title, it becomes even smaller. Here, it became even smaller. So now it's basically changing the size of this header as I remove or as I add text. It has become virtually responsive. Pretty cool. Let's go back here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to clear rotations to go back to the original here. Now let's finish off this exercise by giving you a couple of tips on how to dynamically change the size of different objects here. Now, first, I need to change the picture in two of these shoe images here. Now, a lot of people, again, they were going to do this. They're going to select the content, hit delete, select the content, hit delete, and try and fit in the different image. Don't do that. It's just not worth it. Nothing selected. File, place. You go and find those images. You can find them in folder number 7, catalog, extra1, extra2.jpg. Choose open. And now hold down the Alt key or Option key. Look at my cursor, see that change? And now you just click. Click to replace, click to replace. It's that simple. Now I'm looking to generate something that looks like this here. I'm going to go ahead and open up the finished version of this catalog. I'm looking for this, a larger version of the image that has a zoomed in version of the tip of that shoe. That's what I'm looking for here. So how do you accomplish this? Let me select all 6 images, holding down the Shift key, and I'm going to Alt drag a copy to the left, just so I can have some room to work with here. And now I am going to change the size of the pictures within the frame. Now, if I select the content of the first frame, I'm going to increase the size to 40%. You can clearly see by this brown frame here that it is actually there. It's just white on white, so you can't see it, but it is there, and it is 40%. Don't worry about the fact that you cannot see the image. It is there, trust me. Now I need to apply that same 40% setting to all of the other images. I'm going to do that by using the eyedropper tool, which is something you might have never done before in your life. When you double click the eyedropper, by default, it looks like this. But we're going to change it by deselecting everything and only selecting object size, which means it will pick up and apply object sizes. I'll choose OK. I'm going to click that image. So now it has that 40% transformation in it. Look, I'm going to go like apply, 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 apply. And yes, you do have to say that 5 times out loud. And now I can actually start to work with this. Now you might be thinking, where are the images? Well, they're so big, you can't really see them anymore. So what we can do is I'm going to select all 6 frames. And we know we can click like the content grabber for one frame, but you can't do that for another one. Look at this here. Select all 6. Go up to Object, choose Select, choose Content, shortcut, Shift Escape. I have selected all of the contents of all of the image frames. And now I'm going to use the Shift key and my arrow keys to kind of nudge them back into view. And this is what I wanted to do. This is pretty cool. I'm manipulating everything together. Now this should be a circle. I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to go up to the Object menu, choose Convert Shape, and I'm going to choose Ellipsis. But now, of course, they have to be a proper circle. So now I'm going to select one. I'm going to change their dimensions to 1 by 1 inch. So this is changing the width, changing the height. Those are 2 commands, not 1, 2 commands. Now I need to reapply that here and there and there. So I'm going to select all 5 of them that remain, choose Object, Transform again, Transform Sequence again individually, width and height individually. It does that as well. And now it's just a matter of Shift Escape, nudging them a little bit over here. And then if you want, select those ones, Shift Escape, just kind of put these wherever you want them to be put. And then we're going to place them back. So again, lots of different tips here. Replacing the content by alt-clicking, Shift Escape for selecting the contents of multiple frames, convert to shape using ellipsis, transform sequence again individually, and using the eyedropper tool for applying width and height settings to individual objects. And with that, we have come to the end of the very last exercise and the end of this session. I want to thank you so much for joining my session here. I'm hoping to do this again in real life next year or some other time. I would say, please, if you can, get in touch, find me online. And if you can, please come and say hi to me next time. Thank you so much. And until next time.